Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about something that can leave you completely confused. He becomes distant. He doesn't text the way he used to. He pulls away whenever things start becoming more serious or emotionally deep. And a part of you immediately wants to believe that he simply doesn't care, but then something about his energy tells you otherwise. The way he looks at you, the way he stays around a little longer, the way his attention changes when you're near him. You sense something that doesn't match his behavior. And that's what makes this so difficult to understand. Sometimes someone can become deeply affected by you without knowing what to do with those feelings. We often assume that attraction or love must always appear through obvious effort, constant communication, romance, and consistency. But emotions don't always work that way. Real feelings can be exciting, but they can also be frightening. So, here's what I want you to remember today. Just because he's acting distant doesn't automatically mean you're no longer on his mind. A man pulling away doesn't always mean his interest has disappeared. In fact, this is one of the most misunderstood patterns in modern dating, especially when you're dealing with someone who struggles with emotional closeness. We naturally think that if someone cares, they'll make it obvious. They'll text constantly, plan dates, communicate clearly, and make you feel important every single day. But the reality can be much more complicated when emotions become deeper than he expected. And this next part is important, so don't miss it. When a man begins feeling something genuine, something that goes beyond attraction or simple chemistry, he may react in a way that looks completely opposite to what you're expecting. He may become quieter, he may create distance, he may take longer to answer. Not necessarily because he feels nothing, but because what he feels is bringing something inside him to the surface that he doesn't fully understand yet. For some men, deep emotions can activate powerful fears: fear of being vulnerable, fear of getting hurt, fear of rejection, fear that they won't be enough, fear of losing their independence, fear of becoming responsible for someone else's emotional expectations. And when those fears become active, the natural response isn't always to move closer. Sometimes it's to step backward and create protection. Think about how confusing that can feel from your side. One day, he's completely present. He's playful, attentive, connected, and clearly enjoying your company. Then suddenly something changes. He becomes quiet. His messages become shorter. His emotional presence seems to disappear. And you're left asking yourself 100 questions. Was the connection ever real? Did I misunderstand the chemistry? Did I do something wrong? Why is he acting as if nothing happened? Why did everything suddenly change? But here's where you need to slow down and look at the situation differently. Genuine feelings can sometimes destabilize a person who doesn't have the emotional skills to handle them. He may not know how to process what is happening inside him. So rather than moving toward the emotion, he moves away from it. Rather than opening up, he shuts down. Rather than explaining himself, he creates silence.
And sometimes that distance becomes his way of controlling emotional intensity.
Maybe the connection with you felt better than he expected. Maybe he began realizing that you weren't just another person passing through his life. Maybe he started seeing you as someone who could actually matter. And that realization can be frightening for someone who has spent years protecting himself emotionally. Because when someone matters, they have the ability to hurt you. When you allow yourself to fall, you surrender some control. And not everyone has learned how to be comfortable with that kind of emotional uncertainty. His distance can therefore become a defense mechanism. It's a way of creating breathing room when everything inside him feels too intense. He may tell himself that he needs space. He may convince himself that stepping back will make things easier. He may believe that if he reduces the emotional closeness, he can regain control over what he's feeling. And from the outside, it can look like rejection. But sometimes it is actually emotional self-protection. Now, I want to make something very clear, because this is where many people make a painful mistake. Understanding his behavior does not mean you should excuse everything he does. It does not mean you should chase him, wait endlessly, or accept inconsistent treatment simply because you believe he has feelings. His emotional struggles are his responsibility. You are not required to become his therapist, his emotional rescue system, or the person who patiently waits while he decides whether he's ready. That's not the point. The point is clarity. You need to stop automatically assuming that every moment of distance is proof that you weren't valuable enough. Sometimes his behavior says more about his emotional capacity than it says about your worth. Some men need more time to understand what they're feeling, especially when they're not accustomed to emotional depth or genuine vulnerability. And sometimes being truly seen by another person can shake something loose inside them. When you notice things about him that other people never noticed, when you understand him without forcing him to explain every detail, that kind of connection can feel powerful. It can also feel uncomfortable. Suddenly he realizes that you can see behind the image he normally presents to the world. And for someone who has learned to stay emotionally guarded, being seen can feel almost as vulnerable as being loved. This is why you shouldn't immediately panic every time his communication changes. Instead, pay attention to the entire pattern. Does he eventually come back and reconnect? Does he still look for opportunities to be around you? Does he remember small details about your life? Does he become more emotionally present when you're together in person? Does his behavior show concern even when his words are limited? Does he seem affected by your presence even when he tries to hide it? These details can tell you more than one quiet day ever could. But again, don't turn every small signal into proof of hidden love. That's another trap. Someone can be attracted to you and still be emotionally unavailable. Someone can care about you and still be incapable of building a healthy relationship. Someone can miss you and still choose not to show up properly. Feelings alone are not enough. What matters is whether those feelings eventually become responsible action. So don't spend your life decoding every silence, every delayed message, or every change in tone. You deserve communication that doesn't require you to become a detective. You deserve someone who can eventually meet you in the middle. But if you're trying to understand why someone who once seemed deeply connected suddenly became distant, don't immediately make the story about your inadequacy. Sometimes people pull away because closeness confronts them with parts of themselves they have avoided for years. And sometimes the stronger the emotional impact, the stronger the urge to escape can become. There is another important detail you need to understand. Distance doesn't always mean indifference, but neither does distance automatically mean hidden devotion. The difference is found in the pattern. Watch what happens over time. A person who is emotionally overwhelmed may step back and later find a way to reconnect, communicate, or make an effort. A person who has simply lost interest may continue moving farther away without meaningful effort to repair the connection. Those two situations can look similar at first, but eventually their actions reveal the truth. So don't build an entire emotional story around one moment. Give behavior enough time to reveal its pattern. And most importantly, don't abandon yourself while trying to understand someone else. If he needs space, you can give him space without chasing. If he becomes quiet, you don't have to become louder. If he pulls away, you don't have to run after him trying to prove your value. Your worth does not increase because he chooses you, and it doesn't decrease because he becomes uncertain. Stay grounded, stay focused on your own life, let his actions speak. This is where your power quietly returns to you. When you stop trying to force clarity from someone who isn't ready to provide it, you begin seeing the situation with completely different eyes. You stop asking, how can I make him come closer? And start asking, is the way he is showing up actually enough for me? That is a much stronger question. And remember this, because it may change the way you look at everything. Emotional investment doesn't always appear in the form you expect. Some people express feelings directly. Others reveal them through small actions, subtle attention, lingering presence, nervousness, curiosity, or moments when their emotional guard unexpectedly drops. Sometimes silence is part of emotional conflict. Sometimes distance is simply avoidance. Sometimes it is uncertainty. And sometimes it is a person slowly realizing that they care more than they plan to. You don't need to guess which one it is immediately. You can observe, you can remain calm. You can protect your peace while allowing the truth to reveal itself. Because the goal isn't to convince a distant man to love you. The goal is to understand what his behavior is telling you without losing yourself in the process. If he truly cares, eventually there must be some movement toward honesty, consistency, and connection. If he remains permanently distant, that information matters too. Don't ignore it just because you can imagine a beautiful explanation behind it. You can have compassion for someone's fears without volunteering to suffer because of them. You can understand his emotional wounds without making those wounds your responsibility. And you can recognize that he may have genuine feelings while still deciding that you deserve someone who knows how to express them. That's the balance. Don't romanticize distance. Don't automatically demonize it either. Look deeper, watch the pattern, watch the effort, watch what happens when you stop chasing. Because sometimes the clearest answer comes when you give someone enough space to show you what they actually choose. And here's the part I want you to remember. Long after this video ends, you should never have to shrink yourself, overthink every message, or constantly question your worth just to keep someone's attention. If his feelings are real but he is emotionally unprepared, that is something he must eventually confront for himself. You can care, you can understand, you can remain open, but you should also remain grounded in your own standards. Because the right connection isn't just about someone feeling something for you. It's about two people being capable of handling what they feel. And when you understand that difference, his distance stops controlling your emotions. You stop chasing explanations. You stop taking every silence personally. And you begin watching what truly matters. Not just what he may feel inside, but what he is willing to do about it. Hesitation and withdrawal can sometimes happen because a person becomes afraid of the intensity of what he feels. And strangely enough, that distance can reveal that something inside him was genuinely affected. Something changed. Something moved. Often, when a man becomes distant after a period of closeness, it isn't necessarily because he felt nothing. Sometimes it's because he felt more than he expected and doesn't know how to manage it. When a man is emotionally attached but internally conflicted, his behavior can become extremely inconsistent. This is one of the hardest experiences to understand when you're trying to figure out where you truly stand with someone. One moment he's warm, caring, engaged, and completely present. He's messaging first, making plans, showing interest, and perhaps even allowing himself to become emotionally open with you. Then suddenly, everything changes. He becomes distant. His energy feels different. The effort drops. His replies become cold, unclear, or difficult to understand. And that emotional back and forth can make you question your own instincts. You start asking yourself, was the connection real? Did I imagine what happened between us? But here's something important to understand. When a man has emotional investment, but is struggling internally, whether because of painful past experiences, fear of commitment, fear of vulnerability, or simply a lack of emotional maturity, his behavior can begin contradicting what he actually feels. He's drawn toward you, but he's also fighting that pull. One part of him wants closeness, while another part fears everything that closeness might bring. And that's where the hot and cold pattern begins. He pulls you closer, then creates distance. He opens the door, then suddenly closes it. And if you've experienced this, you know exactly how confusing it can become. But stay with me, because the difference between genuine emotional conflict and simple disinterest matters more than most people realize. The warm moments are often genuine. When he's leaning toward you, when he's opening up, when he's relaxed around you, when he allows himself to be vulnerable and emotionally present, that may be a real glimpse of how he feels when his defenses are lowered. He's not necessarily pretending, but then the colder moments arrive. That's when the reality of those feelings begins to sink in. His mind starts creating questions. What if this becomes serious? What if I get hurt? What if I'm not ready? What if this becomes more than I can handle? And suddenly he retreats, he creates distance, he becomes less available. Not always because the feelings disappeared, but because those feelings have started to feel real enough to frighten him. This kind of conflicted behavior is often immediately labeled as manipulation. And sometimes, yes, people do intentionally play emotional games, but in many situations, especially with people who struggle with closeness or emotional availability, the push and pull pattern isn't carefully planned. It's reactive. He isn't necessarily sitting there creating a strategy to hurt you. He may simply be responding to his own internal fear. He's trying to protect himself, and unfortunately, while protecting himself, he creates confusion for you. His attempt to feel safe can make you feel unsafe. His attempt to control his emotions can leave you questioning yours, and this is where you need to pay attention. One of the strongest signs that a man may be emotionally attached yet conflicted is that he struggles to completely stay away. Even after pulling back, even after creating distance, he somehow finds a reason to return to your space. Maybe it's a random message. Maybe he watches your stories. Maybe he sends a simple just checking in text. Maybe he suddenly appears after days of silence. These moments may reflect a mind that hasn't completely let go. His heart may want connection while his fear tells him to keep his distance. And that internal battle creates the confusing behavior you're experiencing. You may also notice that he becomes more engaged when he senses you are pulling away. When you stop reaching out as much, suddenly he becomes curious. When you become less available, he finds a reason to reconnect. When you stop trying to keep the connection alive by yourself, he starts showing signs of attention again. This doesn't automatically mean he's ready for a healthy relationship, and you shouldn't treat it as proof of commitment. But it can reveal emotional conflict. He may want you close enough to feel connected, but not so close that he feels like he's losing control. He wants the comfort of your presence while remaining protected from the vulnerability that genuine intimacy requires. That is the pattern of someone who is emotionally divided. He's trying to manage the closeness instead of confronting the fear underneath it. And here's where things become especially important for you. This dynamic can keep you trapped in emotional uncertainty. You begin living for the highs. You remember the beautiful conversations, the affectionate moments, the intense eye contact, the times when he seemed completely connected to you, and you keep hoping that version of him will return permanently. Then you analyze everything. Every message, every pause, every look, every change in tone, every withdrawal. You're searching for a clue that will finally explain what he feels. But when someone's inner world is divided, their behavior can remain divided too. Understanding that can help you stop blaming yourself. His inconsistency may be connected to his emotional struggle, not your lack of value. But don't miss this part. Understanding someone doesn't mean accepting endless inconsistency. Compassion does not require self-abandonment. You can recognize that someone is struggling emotionally while still deciding that their behavior isn't healthy enough for you. When someone is emotionally attached but conflicted, they can become their own biggest obstacle. Their actions reveal one thing while their fears push them toward another. You may feel the chemistry. You may notice the emotional tension. You may sense that there is something meaningful between you. Yet at the same time, the connection doesn't feel stable, secure, or predictable. And that's the part that can hurt the most. You can feel something real and still not have something healthy. You can have chemistry without consistency. You can have attraction without emotional readiness. You can have feelings without the ability to build a relationship. So remember this, it is not your responsibility to solve his emotional confusion. You don't have to become the person who teaches him how to communicate, how to trust, or how to face his fears. You can observe the signs without taking responsibility for changing him. And recognizing these patterns can help you stop interpreting every withdrawal as a personal rejection. Because when a man has truly lost interest, there is usually no ongoing pattern to decode. There isn't a constant cycle of coming close, disappearing, returning, and seeking connection again. There is simply less engagement. The important thing is to look at the whole pattern rather than one isolated moment. And now we need to talk about something that can completely change how you experience this dynamic, your own energy. The way you carry yourself can speak much louder than the messages you send. When you value yourself, When you move with confidence, boundaries, calmness, and inner stability, that presence can stay in someone's mind far longer than any attempt to impress them. What you consistently radiate through your behavior leaves an impression. The way you carry yourself matters. The way you respond to distance matters. The way you refuse to chase matters. And most importantly, the way you continue living your own life matters. When you don't beg for attention, compete for affection, or constantly try to prove that you're worthy of being chosen, you create a completely different dynamic. Not because you're playing some dating game, but because you're no longer abandoning yourself to maintain someone else's interest. That difference can be powerful. When a woman holds on to her standards and refuses to lose herself simply because someone is uncertain, people notice. They may not always admit it. They may not even fully understand why the dynamic feels different, but they notice, especially if someone is accustomed to people chasing them, constantly seeking their attention, trying to earn their approval, or changing themselves just to remain in their life. Then they encounter someone who doesn't operate that way, someone who can enjoy their presence without desperately needing their validation, someone who can care without chasing, someone who can remain warm without becoming anxious. That kind of presence can become memorable. Not because she manipulated him or pretended not to care, but because she stayed connected to her own worth. And this is where your energy becomes important. Your emotional state can influence the relationship dynamic. If you're constantly anxious, checking your phone, replaying conversations, wondering what you did wrong, and trying to become more enough, it doesn't just exhaust you. It can create a pattern where you're pursuing while he keeps retreating. Not necessarily because he doesn't care, but because the balance has shifted. One person is constantly trying to secure the connection while the other person becomes the one who decides whether to give more. And slowly, that imbalance begins to damage the relationship. One person is proving, the other is evaluating. One person is waiting, the other is deciding. And that is not the kind of emotional balance you want to build your life around, but something changes when you stop overgiving and start simply being yourself. When you remember that your peace matters, when you recognize that your time has value, when you stop making someone else's attention the measurement of your worth, your energy becomes different. You stop asking, how can I get him to choose me? And begin asking, is he showing me enough consistency to deserve access to me? That question changes everything. You stop obsessing over whether he likes you and start observing whether his behavior actually matches what you need. You stop trying to become the exception and start expecting mutual effort. You stop chasing validation and start watching for reciprocity. And yes, he may notice that shift. Even if he can't explain it, he can feel that you're no longer responding from fear. You're not rushing to fix every silence. You're not panicking every time he becomes distant. You're not trying to convince him of your value. And suddenly the dynamic changes. You're no longer simply someone who wants him. You're someone with a life, standards, boundaries, and choices of your own. You're someone he could potentially lose. But listen carefully, because this is not about making him afraid of losing you. It's not about pretending to be detached so he'll chase you. It's not about withholding affection to gain control. That's still a form of emotional manipulation. This is about genuinely reconnecting with yourself so that someone else's inconsistency doesn't determine how you feel about yourself. Because when someone feels that you're constantly trying to prove your value to them, they don't have to look very deeply to understand the dynamic. But when you move with calm confidence, when you don't respond to every pullback with panic, when you allow people to show you who they are instead of constantly trying to convince them to stay, something powerful happens. You become less focused on controlling the outcome and more focused on protecting your peace. And that is the real shift. You don't need to become colder. You don't need to stop caring. You don't need to pretend that you have no feelings. You simply need to stop abandoning yourself every time someone else becomes uncertain. Let him have his emotions, let him have his fears, let him work through whatever is happening inside him, but let yourself remain grounded too. If he cares, his actions will eventually need to communicate that care in a healthy way. If he's conflicted, he has to take responsibility for that conflict. And if he continues pulling you into a cycle of closeness and withdrawal without offering stability, you have every right to step back. Your job isn't to chase the version of him you see during his warm moments. Your job is to evaluate the complete pattern. Because the most important question isn't whether he feels something. The deeper question is whether he is capable of handling what he feels. And once you understand that difference, you stop letting his hot and cold behavior control your emotional world. You can appreciate the connection without losing yourself inside it. You can care about him without chasing him. You can notice feelings without making them your responsibility. And most importantly, you can remain open to love without sacrificing your peace just to keep someone close.